Welcome to Remember 64, where this week we soar through the skies and rings. We also soar through lots of rings. Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is David Petrangelo, and I can't wait to take to the skies and glide my way around this island that, for some reason, has a rocket taking off to space, a chill harbor full of giant yachts. Oh, hey, look, what's that over there? Some sort of coal plant, deep caves, a science observatory on a cliff? Wait, are we flying around the lair of Dr. Claw, or perhaps Eggman? Maybe it's one of the 19,000 snake baddies or variants or whatever those Metal Gear games do. I think I'm actually just going to get out of here. Those balloons can pop themselves and someone else can go through those rings. Ta-da!
I'm coming in, Dave! I'm coming in! I'm flying in! Heads up! Heads up! I'm coming in! I'm cheeky look back. And I just hang glided off that cliff. But I'm here now. All set to go.
Thank
I missed every ring, but it's okay.
I mean, let's be honest. I did too. Yeah. If anyone hasn't guessed yet, yes, we are talking about Pilot Wings. We are going all the way back to the launch of the N64. We're going to dig into some of the history of the game, which for a game like this, because it's so early, there's actually quite a bit to talk about when it comes to development of the game, because there's a whole lot of processes they went through in order to create it. It's also not the first in the series, which growing up, I had no idea that there was a one before this. I just thought Pilot Wings was Pilot Wings 64. It's a launch title, so it's going to be something, we're going all the way back to the beginning, which we haven't done in a while, and I think that's going to be kind of cool to do too. I also have talk about it as we go, because I'm going to compare this to the SNES version, which I also played, that I think you said is available on Switch Online as well. So both of these are.
It is on Switch Online.
So that's so that's a great opportunity to be able to play both and compare. I played it on actually, I guess I'll just talk about it now. I played it on my little handheld emulation device, because I just completely forgot to check if the Switch had it. And it played great. It was totally fine. I will say that I didn't play it as long as I did for the 64 one, but I think if I played it just as long, I may have enjoyed the SNES one more. So we'll get into that as to some of the differences and stuff. But yeah, let's bust out the history books, everyone. We're heading back to the launch of the Nintendo 64 in North America, and this game, it's time to go back to September of 1996. Okay. Jiggy, this game was created with Nintendo, obviously, but Paradigm Entertainment, which at the time was called Paradigm Simulation, or at least before they started doing video games, founded and began work mostly on flight simulators in 1990. So kind of makes sense why Nintendo might say, hey, you're the guys we want to use here.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So they were usually tapped to do 3D graphics for these flight simulators. They weren't, exclusively doing it just on their own. They'd work with other companies, and they would create 3D graphics for these training modules, essentially. So kind of an interesting way to go about getting into the gaming industry or business, because I know that, Silicon Graphics and all these types of things that happened around this time of gaming, lots was changing. Lots of companies that wouldn't normally do games were getting into it, but it feels like unless you're making specifically a game like Pilot Wings, it's almost like, why else would you be tapped to do something like that? I guess they just had the wherewithal, had the technology, the skills, and whatever. And it was something that, as I found here, it says Nintendo reportedly contacted Paradigm in 1994 after it co-developed a quote-unquote realistic simulator called Hornet with a company that was called Magic Edge at the time. So they had some experience with Silicon Graphics and some connections. So that was being developed in and with the Nintendo 64 with the console. So it kind of made sense, I guess, that they went for it. And then they ended up announcing that this game was going to be, they said it was at the time, and it did end up being a launch title, but they said at E3 in 1995, which would be spring of 95, which would be about a year and a half before the console hit store shelves, that Pilot Wings 64 was going to be a launch title for the console. My question to you, Jiggy, is at this point, had you played this game before we decided to... No, you're shaking your head. No. Okay. All right.
Nope. I had never played this game before. I really didn't even know what it was, to be honest.
Okay.
It's one of those N64 games that me as a kid, like, I'd definitely seen it.
Right.
And I'd seen the Super Nintendo game too, but it wasn't something that I looked at. I'm like, oh, I want that. It
Right.
was one of those games that was out there, and I was like, that probably wouldn't be something that I'd like. Which, like, full disclosure, I don't think is the case, because I think it is pretty entertaining, spoiler alert.
Okay.
But I could see me as a kid not being interested in it just by looking at, like, when you have launch titles like Mario 64 alongside that, like, I know which one I'm picking. And that's probably true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Unless you have money and you can get both, but, you know.
But even then, normally if you are a 10-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, like, you get a game. And I think if a parent is buying that for you, which they would be at that point, they're going to pick the Mario game. And I think this game has some appeal to be a launch title, but I think ultimately where I land on it, and I'll probably say this a few times as we talk more in depth about the gameplay itself in a few moments. I just feel like this game is a proof of concept rather than a game. That's just how I feel about it. It sounds a little bit harsh. It just feels like, hey, like I just mentioned E3 1995, Paradigm and Nintendo showed a demo of this game. I feel like this whole game is a demo. That's what like a demo of what 3D graphics and the N64 could do. Yes, there's more to it than that. I understand. I'm sort of giving it a little bit of short change there, but it feels like, okay, there's physics with the wind and different angles. You can change the camera, and you can land, and there's accuracy with what you're doing. All those types of things feels somewhat new at this time in the mid-90s. So I can kind of understand why this would be a launch title for that reason, but it also feels like this is a game that they would have launched with dev kits, that kind of thing, and that's it. And that it could have been just that. If the areas were simpler, if some of the tasks were simpler and stuff, it would be like, hey, this is what you can do, play this, and then just to show off what the N64 could do. But we know that the console wasn't exactly super available for people to develop with, so that didn't exactly happen.
Yeah, it's like what you're getting at is it feels like a tech demo, and it is basically a tech
That's
demo.
the word I was looking for. Yeah.
If you think about it, this has like all the makings of testing different things. Like you can test how many polygons you can put on a screen, what kind of frame rates you're getting, physics, like depth of field, and like just the different planes of moving back and forth, and the drop distance, and all sorts of things. It's kind of got a little bit of all of that.
Yeah.
And nothing is particularly it looks very early 64.
Yeah, nothing's overly flashy. Nothing stands out as like,
Nope.
oh my god, that aspect of the game looks incredible. It's very blocky polygon type of rendering. Yeah.
And simple texture work. It's got kind of like what I'd call the muddy effect, which some 64 games have. When the textures weren't implemented with lots of colors and stuff, there's a lot of grays, a lot of browns, a lot of greens, and that's partly the environment they were going for. But I mean, you can look at the footage it's playing, and it's like the water is really gray blue, like it's a dark blue. The ground is very gray and brown, and there's green, but it's kind of a dirty foresty green, like very simple colors, very simple shading, just early 64, and it looks like it.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, I don't think we would have expected anything more than that. I will say, in part of the development, it says here that conventional level of, I'm going to explain this further, but conventional level of detail and MIP mapping were used to reduce the computational load. And then I follow this up in my notes by saying, or in plain English, how the game and the console would render and load distant objects and structures without crashing or looking like complete crap. Essentially, that's what they were trying to do.
Yep.
Early on in the console, like we just said, part of that is the way things look, part of the way they move. Something like this, I think this game, especially when you're using the hang glider, for example, you need to be pretty accurate with things. And if they overloaded what they knew they could do at the time with the console and the cartridge, then this game just would have been just like a disaster, honestly. And it would have been really bad to do that as a launch title or an early console title. It would have scared people away, I think.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, because I mentioned it, like I'm trying to think of the technical term, but the draw distance.
Oh, yes.
That's what it is.
Yes.
The draw distance in this game is crazy for a 64 game.
Right?
And that is because it's so simple, right? They don't have to load a lot into the map, which is probably why they made the map so simple and just low polygon count, because you can see a mountain in the distance, and as you get closer, it's still the same mountain. It's the same 3D model. It's almost like they may have smaller 3D. Like there's a technique, right? If you're playing Mario, and your camera zooms out, you get a low poly version of Mario that fills the screen.
Right,
so it's saving on assets, so you can keep that frame rate, right? But this one, it almost looks like it just stays the same, and you just get closer to it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unheard of.
That part's unheard of, and also sort of like the fog of war type of thing, which happens in a lot of games, and happened all the way through the life cycle of the 64 especially, but also in this generation, a little bit less so, but a little bit in the PlayStation as well. But that was a big thing that they had to do with 64, is create these foggy spots so that it didn't have to load as much until you got closer. And yeah, sure, some of the areas in this game do look simple. I mean, it is pretty much the same island all the way through, but I still think it was varied enough. I didn't find that I was bored with what you were flying around and with, which I was surprised. I thought honestly I'd be like, oh my god, I'm flying around an island again. Oh, there's the same building. Oh, there's the same rings. Because you have 3 different vehicles, all that stuff, I think it was mostly okay. So,
yeah, and you get a variety of characters that essentially are just cosmetic. It's just colors.
They're cosmetic.
I don't think there's any other difference.
No, there isn't.
But I do love looking at this footage as it's playing here, like being in the hang glider, like their bodies are just rectangles.
Dude, okay.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
So I should have mentioned this off the top. I'm so bad at this, man. You got to whip me into shape here. I keep forgetting to mention that we also have the video version of the podcast, and we are playing footage of the game. Right now we're looking at someone else's playthrough of it. They seem to be pretty good at it, which I don't understand how you could possibly do, especially this stage with the hang glider, without crashing every time.
Dude, I did it. It took a lot of practice.
Well, yes, it takes multiple tries. This person did it like twice. But yeah, true. If you want to see some of the stuff that we were referencing, video version on Remember 64 on the YouTube channel. But yeah, I think it's so funny when you look at the body in the hang glider. It's like the body's like a tube. It just looked like they're just...
Yeah, it's a tube. It
looks like a bug. It looks like a grasshopper. That's what it looked like to me. The body of a grasshopper.
Yes! It's... what are they called? The bottom part of a grasshopper, is it like the thorax or something?
Oh, yeah. Like yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
The thorax.
Yep.
Sure. Biology.
I
don't know.
Guys, science. I don't know if anyone knew this, but when you come to this show, you're also going to get some science knowledge.
Yes. Science. We're scientists.
We're scientists.
Putting in the man hours to give you precisely what you need. Step Brothers.
Gotta get you around the island and everything. Yeah.
I'm gonna throw out a useless fact because I really want to talk about this because this is totally unrelated.
Is it though? Is it? I feel like it's still related.
Well, it's only because I found this out. Okay, so this is the launch title for the 64, right? And so this is a launch title along with Mario 64. And then in Japan, we don't talk about the European release because they had a lot more games. I'm going to butcher the name here. Yeah. So in Japan, they had Saikyo Habu Shogi, it's just a shogi 64 game. And here's the useless fact. not related to Pilot Wings, but I just think it's so cool. The sequel to that launch title, which is another Shogi game, is the only 64 game that had online functionality. Yes, there was a 64 game that had online functionality. It had a modem port on the back of the cartridge that you could plug in.
What?
Yeah, crazy. I know.
Oh, I mean, I know we can't really explore that because it definitely wouldn't work anymore, but I wish we could
Oh
try
yeah, the
that.
servers are down.
I wish
But
we could
I
try
just
that.
think that's so cool. Like you never think that the 64 had any online functionality, but they did play around with it with one game,
Oh,
which just
that's
blows my mind.
so what year was that? Does it say what year was that? Like 99 or 98 or something?
98.
98. So that's pretty crazy. I mean that look, yes, there was dial-up internet at that time, you know, in certain areas it was reliable, probably not in most places. But the fact that they were like, you know what? This cartridge can barely load anything further than 10 feet in front of your Star Wars character without having fog in front of them. You know, we're gonna try and do this thing online.
Yeah, just the fact that they had the foresight that online was going to be a thing, very
Anything.
helpful. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
just anything. It's so cool.
Yeah, so
But yeah,
Xbox had
back to Pilot
nothing.
Wings.
Screw Xbox. Xbox didn't know what they were talking. Nintendo not figured this out, but Nintendo tried
Oh,
this
please,
way before
Dreamcast.
Xbox Live or
Dreamcast beat
Dreamcast.
Xbox to the punch.
That's
I mean,
true.
Xbox may have been the definitive kind of first online service that really excelled
More
everything. But
full-fledged service, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, even the Sega Genesis had some online functionality, and it was I don't know if you knew this, but the Genesis there was I'm trying to think of the game. I think it was Sonic related,
Mm.
but you could plug in to like your cable your cable feed and it would download at super slow speeds, basically like DLC that you could play. It was like, but it was only at certain times. It was like you had to catch it in this window, like on September the 4th,
Oh,
between 8 and 9 p.m., you can download this to your console and play it. You know, and it was like you had to be tethered in. It was awful, but it was like just so cool. I love quirky stuff like that.
it's great. Like to like you said, the sort of the foresight and trying to be able to like figure that stuff out so early is really interesting. Especially when you say like Genesis. Like I mean, that's even a few years before this, at least. Like at least 3-4 years before, which at that time internet was not readily available to the vast majority of the public that would own these games and these consoles and stuff, right? So okay, so let's talk about the game itself or experience sort of playing the game. I asked you if you played before. Before that, though, I just want to mention that Paradigm Entertainment, this rang a bell with me because if anyone hasn't listened yet, but just a couple episodes ago, if you look on your podcast feed, if you haven't listened yet, Duck Dodgers starring Daffy Duck was also created by the same company, which I know that we have a different opinion on that game. But they had their hands on that. I did not enjoy that game. I thought it was just not worth your time.
I am going back to that game myself. I'm
Okay.
gonna go on my YouTube channel and I'm gonna analyze it at some point and see if it holds up or if I'm just like totally blinded by nostalgia. But I loved that game.
Hey,
So I'm gonna.
that's a game that I never played before. So, you know, I went to it and I was like, okay, I don't know what I expected, but like we talked about with a game like Scooby-Doo, for example, that came out in 2000, so did Daffy Duck. And when you look at the difference of what they did or what the execution was, yeah, they're different games, but I think Scooby-Doo did, for me personally, did something better with what it was trying to do than what Daffy Duck did. But anyways, around the same time. Anyways, Paradigm Entertainment began development on the next console generation, which would have been PS2, Dreamcast, Xbox, that kind of stuff. After it did Daffy Duck, which was also in 2000, they were acquired by Infogrames, which is also a company that will come up multiple times for the N64, including something like Mission Impossible, which was a big surprise for me in 2022 when I played that. So that was a really good game and something, or at least a pretty good game and one that I sort of talked about on the episode that we have of that. After that, they created Spy Hunter, a couple of Terminator games, a Stuntman game. I don't remember what that is. And then they were sold to THQ in 2006. and had 6 different games canceled, including something that was in very early development of another Pilot Wings game. And then the company shuttered its doors in 2007 or 2008. So, you know, the THQ stuff has also been very messy. I think they had a lot of things that were sold off, and then they kind of came back, and then it's just like, you know, the last 10 years for them have been all over the place. So we may have seen a Pilot Wings, you know, sequel or another version of it, maybe sort of mid-2000s, if they weren't acquired or if things were going okay. But this is what we got, and this is the latest.
There's a Pilot Wings on 3DS, isn't there?
That's a great. I did not see that, but they didn't create it. They didn't create it.
Right. So interesting enough.
Yeah.
Kind of another cool little fact, but it is related to Pilot Wings this time. In Wii Sports Resort, wherever it is, there's an island flyover. That island is reminiscent of the Pilot Wings islands.
I do remember that.
I think it even plays. I think it even plays like the music too.
Right.
But yeah, it's based off that island. I don't think it's exactly the same, but it's close.
Yeah, but it's sort of trying to hint at that. We have a little soundboard song to play here. So you mentioned the music, which is pretty good in this game. I think it's pretty chill. It's sort of like jazzy tunes or whatever. But I found an unused mission end sort of song. I clipped it. It's only a few seconds long or whatever, but it's a song that definitely fits with the game, but for whatever reason they didn't use. So we're gonna play that as well. Just something that was cut out of the game. Yeah. So it cuts off. It cuts off so early. It runs for another 5 seconds of ding, ding, the little chimes at the end or the piano or whatever that is.
Smooth jazzy kind of
smooth jazzy, which is
thing.
This game is very smooth jazzy. That's what it's kind of going for the most part. So we're going to talk about the game itself. I just want to tease ahead that at the end of our discussion about the game and us playing it, we have some nerd question of the day answers that I asked the listeners and people on social media to respond to. And the question was, if there was a video game-based vehicle that you would want to fly, what would it be? So we have a handful of questions, a handful of answers for that. So stay tuned in the next little bit. Once we are finished talking about the game, we'll call out your name and we'll talk about your choices. A couple of shared answers as well, but some interesting ones too. So, okay, Jiggy, I've been talking enough. You said you hadn't played this game before. What'd you think?
I thought it was pretty fun, actually. I was pleasantly surprised because, like I said, it's not a game that I would have been interested in as a kid. And it's not something that I'd sit there and I'd play and I'd feel like I need to beat it and unlock everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a fun time to just get in and play and just fly around and experiment. The thing that I really loved was experimenting with the different vehicles.
Yeah, right.
So you get the hang glider, you get the helicopter, and you get the jetpack.
Yeah.
And there's just something, they all handle differently, and it's kind of fun to do all three. I don't think I had a particular favorite. I mean, I might actually say that the hang glider might be my favorite, which I feel like is probably most least favorite.
Yeah.
But it gave me like a sense of challenge.
Yeah.
And it's very reminiscent of I think you said this in the last game, the Batman Arkham games, but just how you dive and you kind of flip back out, and I love building momentum like that. I think it's super cool.
Right.
A lot of fun, and that mechanic is still being used in games. I think Spider-Man 2 just came out. I mean, the physics aren't that much different than Pilot Wings in that regard. You even have the air vents that you got to hit.
That's true. You do have that. Yeah.
Like Spider-Man 2 took a lot of cues from Pilot Wings.
And lots of rings to go through too when you're using your wings, your spider wings or whatever they call. I can't remember what they call it.
Yeah. Exactly. But overall, I had a lot of fun. I didn't complete every challenge. I didn't do all that, but I did play for a couple hours, and I enjoyed my time with it.
Yeah,
I thought it was really, really quirky and fun. And
it's quirky. It's got some personality to it, despite the fact that, like you said, the characters are pretty much just skins. Like everything kind of they're all the same. They just sound a little bit different.
Oh,
Is really
but
all it
Dave,
is.
they have personalities.
Oh
Did
yes,
you not see the
I
manual?
did not. I left that up to you, sir. You mentioned that there was a manual that talked about each individual. There are 6 of them. Please educate me on
So,
who these people are.
okay, so they do have different stats, evidently.
Come on.
And they aren't, I didn't even realize that till I just like looked at the others. I have the manual with their personalities brought up, and I looked to the right, and then I realized they have different stats.
So before we get into the stats, we'll talk about their personality stuff, their sort of traits or whatever it says. Um,
Hmm.
Before we get into the stats, because that might affect how we played the game. Was there a
Yeah.
go-to character that you picked, or did you cycle around?
I did cycle around,
Okay,
but I found myself going back to Hawk quite a bit.
that's the big guy, right? I think.
He's the big guy.
Yeah.
And I think I just liked the way his ship looked because it was like yellow.
Yeah, so I went for like the colors and whatever. I picked mostly the female characters. The one in the bottom right, I can't remember what her name was, and the one in the middle, which I think is the one that you see on the video now that had like the sort of pink outfit or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, sure, I'll pick them. And I pretty much just played as 3 characters, and that's it. But mostly those 2. But let's learn about these lovely people.
Okay. So you got Lark, okay? He's small but very courageous. He moves fast but is affected by wind because of his small size.
Okay,
So he's kind of like an edgy, like
he's like the
he looks
poster.
he looks
He's like the poster child of this game. He's like the
he's
main
the poster
character.
child. He definitely looks like your kind of rowdy 12-year-old. He looks like a little kid. He may have his ear pierced. I honestly can't tell. He just looks rambunctious with his sideways hat. Very Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know, early 90s. And then we got Kiwi, who is kind of reminiscent of Princess Daisy. She kind of has like a yellow outfit and like kind of the orange hair,
Mm-hmm.
and pigtails. And she says, Kiwi is not afraid to get her hands dirty. However, she's small like Lark and easily affected by wind.
Crazy.
That's all she gets.
So that affects. Oh, man, that's crazy that would actually like make a difference with how I had no idea. And that's the thing about playing these games, like whether it's like I played this on Switch, I didn't play it on my EverDrive or anything. I think that it controlled pretty well on Switch. I think it worked. I played it. Did I play it only on hand? I actually just played this on handheld. This and the original. I just played a handheld version. Looked good. Played fine. You know, I don't love the way the Switch feels. You know, long term. Certain games, the Switch in my hands just it hurts my hands. But in this, it worked. I thought it was totally fine, and you can definitely play this game in short stints. And if I would have known that stats were different or characters were different, maybe I would have. I don't know. Maybe I would have done a little bit better sometimes.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Goose is one cool pilot, a self-proclaimed expert. There's not a vehicle he says he can't handle. Ibis. I'm assuming Ibis.
I
Looks like
was saying
Iris,
Ibis
but with a B.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was saying it in my
Small
head.
and calm, Ibis sometimes make mistakes because she gets too confident. Here we go, my boy Hawk. Hawk looks tough, but he's a pussycat. Whoa, that's what it says.
Come on.
He's not very fast because of his size, but he's not affected by wind either.
Oh my god,
Dude, that's hilarious.
That's actually
so
what
he's
it-
actually the slowest.
Couldn't they just say like he's big and tough, but he's a softie
He's a-
or something? Like he's a nice
He's
guy.
a pussycat.
Oh my god,
They
that's
straight up called Hawk a pussy. That's
that's
hilarious.
so. Oh my god, that's amazing.
And then Robin, one of the prettiest pilots around. Nothing bothers Robin like Hawk. Oh, sorry. That was a period. Nothing bothers Robin.
Oh,
Like Hawk, wind does not affect her.
okay.
I thought it was like, Hawk doesn't bother Robin.
Punctuation.
But yeah, it's cool. So then it'll say the stats over here.
Yeah.
And it looks like, so they're pairs, right? Lark and Kiwi have the same stats. Goose and Ibis have the same stats. And then Hawk and Robin have the same stats. So Lark and Kiwi, good reaction to the control stick. Not easily affected by inertia, but their small size makes them susceptible to wind. And then it depends. Oh, it depends on the different
Vehicle.
vehicle as well. So like the gyrocopter, their average is what it says in everything.
Okay, so
Cannonball.
hmm
Yeah, wow. Skydiving average. It's interesting.
that's
Just
so
easily affected by wind. That's the biggest thing of them.
yeah. So that's the thing with sort of emulating these and playing them on Switch is that like I guess part of my point with which I completely forgot to say before is that like you don't have the manual in front of you, right? Like
Right.
I don't I generally am not. I've said this in other episodes too, but I generally am not looking up the manual when I'm playing these games. So I'll look at the controls and maybe I'll even look it up if it doesn't include it in like the main menu or in options or something like that. This game actually does a good job of sort of telling you and stopping you and saying, hey, these are the controls for this specific, um, uh, thing that you're using to fly, and that's what you need to know. Same,
I'm glad you bring this up.
yeah,
I'm glad you bring this up because this is something that it's a generational thing.
yeah,
Physical media is kind of just they're slowly phasing it out, right? Companies just don't want to do it anymore. But you don't see a lot of manuals anymore, even in the physical media. If you open up a game, you don't have a manual anymore. And
no,
that's something I've always loved. I love when they put their own spin on it. They put the lore of like the
yeah,
characters and stuff
yeah,
that you can read in. And obviously it doesn't really matter with games ultimately in the end, but there's a couple Switch games out there that they give you a small manual, and I prize those. Like they're so much fun. And those old 64 manuals were back when they really cared about it, and they did custom art and
yes.
excuse me, and like just the fact that they put lore for these characters that really
It didn't matter,
don't
really.
need it.
Yeah,
It didn't matter at all, but it's just funny that it gives them some personality. And if you're reading that, it's just it adds a little something to the game, that it
Yeah,
wouldn't have
it really
otherwise.
does, and it feels like I mean, maybe at the time it didn't because everyone was doing it, but now it feels like if you pick up physical copy of a game, like an old one, let's say, and it comes with the manual, they're gonna like quote unquote charge you more when you buy it online, all that kind of shit for like collecting and all that kind of stuff, which I understand. It's sort of like a complete thing, but I have a copy of Super Mario Kart, like the original one, with the
Mhm.
manual, and it actually like is tells you what each item does. It gives you an example of how to go around corners properly. It tells you, it explains each stage, and it has a place. This is something I remember from manuals that I don't think I ever really used because I actually didn't want to do this, but a place that you can write notes where you can like
Yeah,
basically give
yeah.
yourself like little, tips or something like that, things that you can remember. Like, I know you don't need a place to write notes anymore. You can do it in your phone in 2 seconds. You can talk to your phone in 2 seconds. But those types of things will never be there anymore. Even if they still had manuals, let's say every game still did for the last decade, which is kind of the time period where it's been slowing down, the notes part would not exist. It still would be taken out. That would be the first thing that they would get rid of because they would figure, well, no
Yeah,
one needs it, right?
absolutely.
So the fact that like even in digital form in this game, when you start up every single challenge, every single stage, you can just go and remind yourself, like what I did with this game, because I played it over the course of off and on for a couple weeks, I would say. I played for an hour here. Okay, put it down. Okay, I'll play for half an hour now. I'll put it down. Like that kind of thing, which is kind of, I think, a good thing in this game that you can actually do that. And I'd have to
Oh
remind
yeah.
myself what the controls were. And I was like, great, cool, I got it. I don't have to go look it up online. It's right there in the menu before you start, no matter what thing you're using to fly, no matter what character you are, what level you're doing, it's right there. And, maybe that's just an early thing that they were just like, we have to tell people how to use 3D flying controls because this game is such an early 3D game. But I think that was kind of cool. So I enjoyed that. Um, I wanna talk about. I'm gonna directly reference what we're seeing on the screen right now. So please, if you want to see, because the description's not going to do it any justice, but if you want to see what I'm talking about and why this was potentially my favorite stage or my favorite idea,
It's pretty cool.
was when you were using, was it gyrocopter? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the gyrocopter.
Gyrocopter shoots rockets because, of course, it shoots rockets, I guess, because it's a
Why
plane.
not?
Yeah, it basically controls very similar to a plane. It was, I think, to me, the easiest to control because it was the most familiar. But one of the tasks later on, or about halfway through the sort of stages that you play, is you have to shoot these rockets at this robot that is running around this town, I guess, and throwing rocks at you. and it has this really funky face that has like this weird mustache and like mohawk looking hair, and it is the most odd choice of what this thing looks like that I've ever seen for a robot. Just make it a blocky bunch of squares that look like an old school robot. What I thought when it said shoot the rockets at the robot was it was going to look like the robot from Intergalactic, music video from the Beastie Boys. That's what I was expecting. Just squares. Just walking around, knocking over these buildings, whatever. But no, it's a guy with black boots, a funky mustache and mohawk, and just runs in circles and throws rocks at you. And it is the funniest, stupidest thing I've ever seen. And it's somehow...
It's quirky.
It's so... Oh my god, it's so funny. It's hilarious. I liked it because the controls felt the most comfortable for me with the gyrocopter. But also, I just think it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
I think it gives you a different goal, right?
That's true.
'Cause
Yes.
You're doing something different than the most part. The game, you're just kind of flying around through rings. You're trying to land and get the best score, right? Yeah. But this gives you slightly different mechanics, and it's fun to do that.
It's so random.
And just for the record, I'm not meowing at Dave. If you can hear, that's my cat. She jumped on my lap, and she is meowing. So video form, anybody who checks out the YouTube video, here's my cat. Her name is Thea.
Hello.
And she's fat and loud and talks to me. Love her, though. But I just wanted to, disclaimer.
Just in case.
Not that Dave isn't someone you could meow at.
That
wasn't what I was doing.
Worse things have been slung towards me, so it's all
meow.
good. Meow.
That's me. That's the different.
Meow. Okay, so let sort of there was oh my god, and now the robot in the water. I forgot about that. Look at that mustache. Look at it. Like what is
He's
this?
So goofy. He looks like Nigel Thornberry. Just like as a robot.
Oh my god. It totally does.
Smashing.
It totally does. Oh my god. Oh, and this guy crashed in the water, which I also did multiple times. Okay, so yeah, you mentioned that it changes things up. Because for the most part, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a series of points in order to get your certification, which is the same thing they do in the original game. You try to land a certain way, but really, you're trying to fly through rings. I sort of referenced this at the front of the episode. You're flying through these different rings for the most part, is what you're doing, and it's time based.
Think Superman 64, but fun.
Oh, we'll get to that one. That's for sure. I am very curious about re-exploring that game because it's been probably whatever year that came out. I'm sure I rented it once or twice, but I don't remember. I'm not sure. I don't remember what the experience was at the time.
I beat that game.
Did you really? Oh, I didn't know like anyone ever did. I thought everybody just gave up after a while.
I never gave up. Yeah. I don't quit, and I don't run, and I will be Hokage. Believe it.
There you go. 2 episodes
Life
in a row.
I know. I was like, I'm gonna throw this in again.
Do it. Yeah. So I said this earlier. I think that the whole ring thing. I don't know what else. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what else you do with this. But the whole like flying through rings and stuff, multiple times with multiple vehicles, felt like okay. I know I'm shooting Mr. Thornberry here every once in a while. But the ring thing was like, can I do something else? Like, can I please? And you said you liked the glider. When the glider showed up in the last 2 difficulty spots, like the last 2 sort of certification ones, I completed one of them, and I think I just barely did. But I was like, Jesus, can maybe part of it's the characters, and I didn't notice that they were that different. But every time I went left or right and made like a small mistake or something, I was all over the place. I could not get back in control once I lost control. So it might be the difficulty thing. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm just not very good at it. Maybe it's playing on Switch. Maybe playing on the actual N64 controller would have... I don't know.
I will say that playing as different characters, I didn't notice that they played different either. I had no idea until I just read that.
Thank you for backing me up on my lack of knowledge.
Yeah, it didn't feel like if obviously they have differences. It's saying for a fact they have differences, but they must be like pretty minor, like generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and obviously it depends on what vehicle you have too. So the differences are different depending on the vehicle.
Yeah. Well,
But
which is
I
good
just
to
like the
have,
hang
but
glider. It gives me that sense, especially that one that we saw it earlier where you dive down the winter snowy mountain.
oh yeah, like the
You're like
cliff.
flying down
Yeah,
it and
yeah,
then you like shoot back up. I just think that was pretty cool. I
yeah.
just like it.
Well, in some ways, stages like that, which is slightly earlier in the game, kind of teaches you in some ways on how to do that. That you can
Hmm.
actually dive straight down and then pull yourself up, and now you got momentum and your height and whatever.
Yeah.
You know, again, very early on in 3D, very early on in the console cycle, literally launch. So this game was put together over the course of like a year and a half. You know, all that kind of stuff. So I think largely it does work. I think it's just the dated controls and the dated feel of things. I don't necessarily hold it against it. I just sort of hold it against it. I don't know
Yeah,
how to
at the end
explain
of the
it.
day, right, you're still thinking to yourself, this feels like a glorified tech demo. It really
It
does.
really does, because even now we're watching a stage where you're shooting targets. I actually liked this one. This one was kind of cool because you could actually shoot a couple targets at once if you lined them up, as
Yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah.
So you can knock a couple out at once. This one was, okay, sure. Instead of flying through rings, you're shooting floating targets. Fine, fair enough, right? But it was enough to do something a little bit different. Maybe I just like, again, maybe just the controls with the gyrocopter, the helicopter thing felt better to me. It was more the glider that frustrated me more than anything. And I think when it got too complex, I found it like if I did not do a perfect run, I I could not. I had to start over. And I think if they tried to do something a little bit less complex later on with that specific vehicle, it would have been better. But yeah, it's still, yes, you're shooting targets. Yes, you're shooting a robot, but it still felt like this. Yeah, this was a N64 demo for people to get excited for. And
And
I don't know.
it's not often that I have to point this kind of thing out, but I don't know what the measurement is in Canada. It's probably kilometers per
Yep.
hour.
Yep.
Yep. So we're miles per hour in the US. So just the kilometers, I don't know what that means. I'm trying to
So
translate that in relation to
100 kilometers an hour is 60 miles an hour, or like 61 miles an hour. Is that's the translation? So
okay.
yeah.
I acknowledge that the miles per hour is weirder. Like
Oh,
it feels
it's a
like
strictly American thing. Yeah.
yeah. It's so weird how we do that. But it's bizarre. It's like when I play. I'm gonna throw out another game out there, Phasmophobia,
Yep.
because you can use a thermometer and you can do the temperature, and
Celsius.
it's set to Celsius, and you can set it to Fahrenheit, which I love that I can change it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like you think about it, Celsius, you go to 0, that's freezing, right?
Yes. Anything
And
below
then
zero is freezing. Yeah.
but then it's like in Fahrenheit, it's 32 degrees is
Yeah.
freezing.
The
And it's like but it's like one of them is definitely makes more sense. But like I can't wrap my head around not having 32 degrees being freezing. You know what I mean? So then I have to like translate it in my head. So like the kilometers per hour, I'm like, well, I don't know, like in relation to miles, how fast am I
how
actually
fast am
going?
I going? Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like I want to do math in my head because I want to figure it out, but I don't care enough to do that.
it,
But it's like a very very small detail. I just wish I could change that. Meters are fine. I guess I can understand those. I can wrap my head around meters because it says like your sea level, right?
yeah.
So like just looking at the HUD, you got kilometers per hour, which is your speed. You got your fuel gauge. You got your height gauge, and that's like measuring it how many meters you are above sea level, which I just appreciate. And then you got your mini map and everything. You actually got quite an extensive HUD, and it kind of takes up a
It
lot of the screen.
it is. Yeah. And the thing about the height thing, like regardless of whether they use meters or just a number with, like, let's say they just had a number 1 to 200, which I think it goes up to like 200 or 150 or something.
Mhm.
It also has like what looks like a thermometer, honestly. So it's not just the number that tells you where you are. It actually
Right.
shows you in a red bar how close you are to the ground or to sea level and stuff. And I think that's helpful. It's just a visual. You don't actually have to think about what those numbers are, which is nice. You're right. It actually is a pretty full-fledged complex HUD, but still makes sense and doesn't feel crowded as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for some reason, like I'm looking at it now, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff on screen. But when you're playing, you almost don't notice it. You're just so focused on your ship
Mm-hmm.
and flying straight, right, and centering the camera around it.
Mm-hmm.
But that mini map is super helpful. That
Yeah.
mini map is so helpful because you gotta a lot of the times with the rings, and like right now the balls are sitting there. Like just finding them, you can see them clearly on the map. Everything gets highlighted, so you know, oh, that's where I need to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you didn't have that, I could imagine it'd be a lot of exploring, and if you're trying to like kind of manage your fuel, it could be frustrating.
Yeah. Did you ever?
But
Now you mentioned that. Did you ever have a problem with the fuel? I never really
no,
like ran out. I came close a couple
no,
times because I screwed up, but it was just sort of an afterthought. I think for me.
yeah, I can't say I particularly ever really got
Worried
too
about
close.
it.
I mean, like I
Yeah.
got low, but it never felt like a thing because if I met, I also have this thing where like if I messed up and I know I messed up and I'm like doing time, I might just restart.
Yes. Yeah.
Like so, the fuel was never an issue. It was more like, oh, I missed like 6 of those. I can do better.
Yes.
I'll just restart it because
That's pretty much
they're
it.
like small stages and so small doses. I don't mind restarting things
Mm-hmm.
like this.
Yeah.
But it also depends on the stage and how complicated it was because sometimes I'm just like, I'm done.
Yeah, I found it was like lower with this with the jetpack thing because when you
Hmm.
pressed one of the buttons, it lets you hover, but it actually eats up a lot of your fuel, even though it stops you in one place, which is kind of interesting. But I guess they just don't want you to use it too much. They want you to sort of play with the physics and all that kind of stuff.
The physics work great.
The physics are
Let's
cool,
just say
right?
that.
Again, very much tech demo type of thing. Like this particular stage that we're looking at has you pop one balloon and it explodes. I think into like 5 different ones. And I noticed that when I did that, because I didn't do, like you just said, you restart because you don't feel like you didn't do a great job in it or something like that. I noticed that when I did it the second or third time that I did it, the balloons don't pop and bounce to an area that is exactly the same. It actually, depending on your speed and your angle of the way that you pop the initial balloon before it sort of expands into other ones, they will move in they will pop and move and
That's
bounce
cool.
in slightly different ways. It's not drastically different. They still go left, right, up, down, whatever. But it wasn't exactly the same. And I thought, okay, well, you know, this is still a little bit of a skill puzzle that you have to figure out, but you don't, you know, if you played this 5 times and you completed it 5 times, you could still get a better score on on a result after you popped it that ended up being even harder, which would kind of be pretty rewarding, right? So I thought that was pretty good. You know, the physics kind of worked and stuff. Again, early 3D stuff, it still worked. I just kept going back to like, okay, this is just, it felt like it was lacking a little bit of something. Whereas when I played the SNES version, which was like a couple days after I put this one down, it didn't feel that way, and it actually felt pretty like felt like they were what they were doing in the original one was pretty advanced for the time. Whereas with this one, yes, it was technically advanced because it was like a very early 3D one, but
Hmm.
it didn't feel as impressive, which is really odd to say because it was a launch title for a very early
I
3D game.
I I see what you're saying. I think the thing about the SNES game is it's 3D too, right?
Yeah,
It's 3D
yeah.
and that feels very impressive on that hardware. I actually thought it was a Super FX chip game like Star Fox, only to find out it wasn't. In fact, I think I looked up. Wasn't that a launch title for the SNES?
The Pilot
The
Wings?
original Pilot Wings?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
think
even
it was
check
also a
that.
launch title.
Oh.
I could be wrong on that, but I thought I read
I'll look
that.
it up. I'll look it up.
So the fact that
Yeah,
it was 3D,
right.
I mean, mind blowing, right? But it,
1990, shortly
yeah,
after the launch. So kind of similar to like when Shadows of the Empire came out for 64 a couple months later, a month later, or
little
whatever.
little bit later,
Yeah,
but
similar idea. So
basically
yeah,
in
basically
that
launch.
window, very early
Yeah.
SNES game,
Yeah,
and
launch window.
to have it in 3D, very impressive.
Yes.
Probably functioned very similar. They were pushing the hardware, and they were like, let's put this out there.
Yeah.
I think the reason why the 64 one seems less impressive is because we were moving into 3D anyways, especially being launched alongside something like Mario 64, Whereas I feel the visuals in this game weren't what made it shine.
Yeah.
It was the physics. It was the like, look at what we can do. We can make this with the joystick and everything. It feels like you're actually like a flight simulator, as opposed to
Yeah. Which is why they tapped the
Mario
team
64.
to make it.
That was
Yeah.
a story and an experience and kind of a
An adventure game, and this is sort of a flight.
This is
adventure.
arcadey.
It's yeah. Oh no, it could definitely be this game could be in the arcade. They would make a fortune.
Yeah,
you'd have to restart so many times.
It's an arcade game at a time where we were just introduced to really like story driven, these massive, like people were expecting one thing, and it's a fun little. This I could see this, like, people get launch titles, right? There wasn't many games at launch. Everyone's getting Mario 64.
Yes.
People pick this up because it's the only other game available, and then it's like a multiplayer experience, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't see this selling as well as it did if it wasn't a launch title.
Yeah, so it sold 500,000 copies within a year, which is not, or just under a year, which is not a ton. But it's not like there was 700 million like Mario titles or 700 million consoles available. So it still did pretty well. But yeah, like I think you're going to get Mario, and then you're going to like wait for Mario Kart, or you're going to wait for Star Wars. Like those things are going to keep, and Mario 64 obviously had enough to keep you busy as well. So unless you pick this up within the first month or two, you're maybe going to get it, a little later, because let's be honest, the first year of the 64 didn't have a ton of games. It was still pretty light. They were good, but it was still pretty light, right? So that's actually a good little sort of. It's always great to point out the segues, but this is a good segue into the fact that I have a Nintendo Power magazine that has volume 87, which if anyone did not tune into our live stream of Scooby-Doo in October. This is one of the issues that I'm actually mailing out to someone who won the copy of this. But this is August of 1996. So this would have released, let's say, about 5 to 6 weeks before this game launched and the console launched. Somewhere around there, right? And not only does this specific Nintendo Power have a sort of like preview / like tease of the Japanese launch of the N64.
Oh man.
But it also has a pull-out poster, which I have in a copy of mine, of Pilot Wings.
Whoa!
With the characters
sick.
on it. And if anyone's watching the video version, you can see it says the flight ETA is September 30th, 1996 from Nintendo and for the N64. And it's actually pretty good shape. So the individual that won this is going to get a pretty damn cool looking thing. And then
it's a pretty cool poster.
At the back, there's actually a Pilot Wings contest. So that's like the splash page of it there.
Man, Hawk looks so cool.
Hawk is right up front. He is the man at the moment. So
he is the man.
So the grand prize is a trip.
But he's a pussy.
But it's apparently, and like also look at like his hang gliders, like actually wings, which is clearly not. Like, clearly, like, Hawk
he
Wings.
He is the Pilot Wing.
He is the wing in Pilot Wings.
Yes. He is the pilot with wings.
So the trip that you could win in this is actually pretty cool. It's just around the U.S., but still lots of cool stuff. A trip for 4 to one of the famous landmarks featured in Pilot Wings 64. So my quick little blurb at the beginning, I mentioned, there's a rocket taking off, and there's boats and whatever. One of these 5 locations you'd win a trip to: Mount Rushmore, Cape Canaveral, which is where they launched rockets from, Washington, D.C., so you go to the Capitol, or you go to the White House, Hollywood, or apparently Seattle. Not a specific spot, but just Seattle.
Seattle.
Which is where Nintendo was based out of and stuff, so I think maybe that's probably part of it. So, if anyone is listening to this and won one of these prizes, let us know how it was. How was Mount Rushmore or Seattle in 1996?
I feel like if someone gets in contact with us and they were the winner of said contest, I feel like I'm gonna give you something.
Yeah.
Like I like
Yeah,
that. That
honestly.
is like you tell us the story because that
Please.
is amazing.
Yeah, it's so you have to send it in no later than September 1st of 1996 and receive it. They have to receive it at about September 15th. So that means that, yeah, this would have come out in August. They would have given everybody about a month to send it in. And there's also secondary prizes, including a T-shirt and that's of Nintendo Power and a copy of the game as well. So, you know what? Pretty cool. Little sort of look back into
Yeah.
the history of before the console came out in North America. This was North American prize.
Oh man, back in the good old days when we had magazines with stuff in it that actually was cool.
Oh, and I put as of this recording, I posted this today, but you can look back on Remember 64 across social media and look at the fact that at the back of this magazine there is a Virtual Boy
Oh
ad.
man,
So it's a Virtual Boy,
sick nasty.
yeah, a Virtual
Oh,
Boy ad that says "New low fare to the third dimension, $99." And
oh man.
yeah, so Virtual Boy makes an appearance in this as well. Okay, so we're talking about Pilot Wings. I don't know if there's much else to say, honestly.
We
I
were.
think we were, and then I decided to pull out a magazine. Um, for me, again, I thought it was fun, but I didn't get like this sense of excitement out of it. I don't not that I necessarily expected that,
Yeah.
but it didn't feel like I had some rush. And yeah, I wanted to play as much of this as I could, and I probably in total played about 3.5 hours. Probably a lot of that was failing and restarting and whatever. But it wasn't like I was compelled to get a super high score or compelled to get perfect on every stage or whatever. I did get a couple perfects in beginner, by the way, which I surprised myself. But those early ones are pretty simple. But yeah, overall, it's just okay for me. I don't know that it's a must play or must own, but it's not something that's going to necessarily be really crappy or disappointing either.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, it's early, so it's really hard to be like, well, I expected this. No, I kind of expected what it gave me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that it's one of those games. If you're rounding out your collection, you're trying to get all the 64 games. Like, if you find it like cool, it's probably not worth it much. I don't actually know. Maybe we should look it up.
I will
But
look it up.
it's one of those games. I'd say if you're curious about it, go try it on the Switch Online. You'll probably play it for like an hour and then put it down. Because that's about what I did. I mean, I played it longer than that, but not much.
But
I
you're not
mean,
going to play it also in long stints either, right? It's going to be half
no,
hour, it's
it's
going to be 20 minutes, and then you're going to play something
yeah.
else. But also the stages lend that. Like, that is how it's structured, and that's totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not catered to somebody who wants like a story or
No.
uh kind of a it's almost there is a multiplayer mode, right? I don't remember what the multiplayer mode is,
I don't
but
know what it is, but it's there.
there's something. It's another game that I feel like would be something fun to play with friends if you're like couch co-op, you're looking for something to play.
Yeah.
Like try this, try it on Switch Online and just
Try to beat each
have
other's
some fun with it.
score or something.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah.
probably laugh. You'll probably do stupid stuff and
Yeah.
laugh about it. But it's not something that if you play it by yourself, you're gonna be like, okay, play it for like half hour to an hour and be
That
done with
happened.
it.
Yeah.
But you might be enticed to go a little bit further if you play it with friends.
I think
And
so.
I feel like maybe that's the draw of this game versus like Mario 64 as a launch title.
Mm-hmm.
If you can play multiplayer, which I'm gonna look up actually right now because
So yeah,
I
so
feel
you
like
do that,
I'm
and
talking out of my
I
butt.
looked up sort of what the game would generally go for, a physical copy of the game. It's cheap, I think, because they probably made so many of these. If you just get the cartridge itself, it's anywhere between $15 to $25 is what I'm seeing. Quick search online, not crazy. Yeah, I think if it, like you said, I think if it rounds out your collection, sure, go get it. But if you haven't played it yet at all, or haven't played either of these, the SNES version or this one, try them online, and then if you wanted to round out your collections, you'll probably get them for pretty cheap. So, or at least the 64 version you will. So yeah.
Yeah, and so this is actually single player, which is hilarious to me.
I-
But at the same time, I still could see it being multiplayer, like you're competing against your friend's time. Like
yeah, your score.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's multiplayer still. Like it has this draw to me where I can envision the multiplayer. It's just like competing against your
You just pass
like
the
time
controller
trials.
over. That's all. Like you
Yeah.
pass the controller over and you try and beat it. If you beat your friend's score by 1 point, you win. Like, and that's fun and that's
Yes.
exciting, right? So I think that's totally fine. Um, yeah, it's an okay game. You wanna give it sort of like a mild score, or something.
Yeah, I'm
I
trying to
say mild
think.
score because it's kind of like okay. So while you think of it, I have something in mind. Last
Okay.
episode we kind of pondered sort of Scooby Doo's sort of balance of the charm and the whatever and all those types of things. This is kind of the same to me. It has some personality, has some some ups and downs to it. Mostly it's middle of the road type of thing, but there's not a lot of excitement there. So for me, it's a little bit lower than like what a mid-level game would be. So I'm gonna give this probably another 5, which doesn't feel great, but
Okay.
I don't think it's a complete failure. Again, there's just not a ton of depth to it, and I just don't get like a huge sense of excitement out of it. And that's probably why. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking in the same ballpark. I was initially like the number that popped in my head was a 6,
Mm-hmm.
but I was thinking about it. I'm like, I really like gameplay wise it plays well. But there's not much substance to it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
I had to drop it down. I'm gonna say it's about a 5.5 for me.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a little bit higher just because I feel like it does work.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's by no means a bad game. Like I'm not deterring people from playing it. It's just there's not a lot there. There's
Yeah.
not a lot there.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so Pilot Wings. People check it out if you're interested. Again, if you have Switch Online, like the expansion pass on Switch Online, won't hurt you to play either of them. I think it's actually fun to experiment and play both and just see the differences and similarities because there are some similarities, interestingly enough.
Hmm.
But to round out the episode and round out our Pilot Wings coverage, I teased it before. Nerd question of the day was if there was a video game vehicle that you wanted to drive or fly or just take control of, what would that be?
Oh,
Um,
what's yours, Dave? You should say yours before anybody else.
Ooh, I should say mine before anybody else. So I was trying to narrow this down. It's a little bit of, I don't know. I was gonna say it's a Star Wars vehicle because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but honestly, if it was strictly video games, it would probably be one of the carts in Super Mario Kart, like probably like the original carts, because they all are just like essentially. I always thought they sounded like lawnmowers. They're like really fast lawnmowers that pick up coins and shells.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go with that because I love that game. It's my favorite Mario Kart game, and I just love that one cart could be used by everybody.
Yeah. To be fair, it looks like it would be a good time.
Yes,
Like
yes,
I could see
yeah,
that being just a blast to drive around, and go-karts themselves are fun.
yes,
So I can only imagine a Mario Kart go-kart. This is
right,
just faster and better.
right.
I think personally I would say so my initial thought was a Warp Star from Kirby.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like that would be super cool, but then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, well, I'm a person and flying through space that would suck. And then I was like, well, the compromise is an R-wing from Star Fox, right? So that's what I had to go with. An R-wing from Star Fox, I think that would be you can fly it slow, you can go down, you can go low to the ground, you can fly under what? You can't fly underwater, but you can fly
you can glide.
like
You
you
can.
can glide on top of the water, and I
Yeah.
think that's cool. And then you can shoot out into space.
Yep.
I
Versatile.
just think that has some, but yeah, it just seems cool, and it could go really fast too.
Yes, 100%. And both of those answers, the star and R wing were popular answers as well. So let's go back and forth. I'm going to start with the first one. I don't know if you have it pulled up in front of you or not, but I'll start with the first one. This one actually
Yes.
came up a couple times as well. DG and Gwent Champ, both on sorry, Gwent Champ on Blue Sky and DG on Twitter both said, "Is it Epic or Epoch? I think it's Epic, the time traveling vehicle from Chrono Trigger," which is really awesome. I mean, like that is something that is just an epic, advanced sort of like really cool idea implemented in an amazing way in an amazing game. I don't think you can go wrong with that. Like if you really want something powerful and cool and makes a huge impact literally on what you're doing,
Yeah.
it's that one. So that's an awesome pick.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's really cool. It's like TARDIS vibes, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Yes, there you go. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
yeah.
I feel like it's not as exciting though. Like it's cool.
Mm.
It does a lot, but it's like not as it's not. There's some element of personal.
Personal craft.
Like this is my craft. This is my vehicle. I'm gonna
Yeah,
do it.
I
Whereas
think
it feels more like a like it's like walking into a building versus
driving a building. Yeah.
drive. Yeah, you know, it just doesn't feel the same.
I think
Which
part of it I think is like the fact that it's from Chrono Trigger as well. I think that plays
Yeah.
into some of that choice or choices similar to that, because that's such an epic, incredible game. So it means a lot to people.
Yeah,
It's a
for sure.
classic, amazing game. So yeah, fair enough.
You got Josh Wise on Blue Sky and a novel console on Twitter, aka X.
No, it's Twitter.
R Wing from Star Fox.
R
I
Wing from Star
agree.
Fox. There you go. R Wing from Star Fox.
Absolutely.
Also, Rare Warrington on Jiggy's Discord, by the way.
Word.
Also said the R Wing, and also mentioned Slave One, which is the quote, which
Yeah.
is quote unquote previous name of Boba Fett's ship. It's the Slave One. But yeah, R
Yeah, if
Wing
we're
got
talking
mentioned a
about
few times. Yeah.
if we're talking about Star Wars and had to relate it to video games, I always thought that Episode One Pod Racer, like having one of those
Yes.
pods,
Yes.
would be so much fun.
Yeah. I agree.
Although I'm not gonna lie, it's scary as crap too. At the same time, like
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd actually want to do it. I'd probably like if I had a big open desert and I could just floor it and just let it go really fast, and then I'd stop and I'd get out and be like, "That was fun. I'm done." Just no racing, no blowing it up, please.
Yeah, please.
I don't
just-
have the force. I don't
No.
need it.
Well, as far as you know, you
I'd
don't
be
have
like
it. You haven't
Jar
tried
Jar
it, though.
Binks. I'd be flopping all over the place.
Yeah. Have the one
Secretly
that
a
starts
Sith Lord.
spinning, like when you knock out the one side and you start spinning, like that one. And the guy does that. Okay, so I mentioned you mentioned the star, the warp star, superstar. I keep forgetting what the name is from Kirby. Rangoon
Warp
on
Star.
Twitter said it showed a screenshot of Kirby's air ride specifically. But I think it's just like generally that's probably what they're
That
going for. So
Well, the thing about Kirby Air Ride is there's like a billion different warp stars that you can go.
Mm,
Like you get different stars to ride on. So
right. So
if he's just going base warp star, yeah, I mean it's cool.
yeah, but the way it's implemented, again, similar to the Chrono Trigger, where it's like, oh, that vehicle may not be quote unquote the most exciting, but if Air Ride is a game that really connects with you, then you're gonna gravitate towards
Yeah.
what Air Ride does.
Air Ride's a great game.
It is a
That's
great game.
cool
It's
one
been
if
so long
if
since
no
I
one's ever
played
played
it.
it, but
I gotta
Yeah.
revisit that. Yeah.
that would be if they remastered that or something, released it on Switch and had an online mode, that game would be a hit.
Oh my god.
That's what it needed to
Down.
just be huge.
Yeah.
It's so competitive.
Yeah.
Like me and my friends when we play Kirby Air Ride, we're not friends anymore. It's great. Let's see. Wow, this is a tough name to pronounce. Loricella? Loricella?
That's what I was gonna say. Loricella, but also says
Loricella
Leonard.
Leonard in parentheses
Yeah.
on Instagram. Nice Instagram representation. The Cadillac from Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. That is actually kind of awesome.
Yeah, so I had no idea what this was. They just wrote
There's
it.
a
'cause
picture.
I copied a picture into our document because I was like, "What is this?" It is such a '90s arcade looking like couple of stages. It's a beat 'em up. It's very much like a Streets of Rage type of idea. And then you have a couple of like they ride in on this Cadillac apparently at the beginning of the game, and it's just sort of part of something that their characters or whatever. And there's some stages instead of being like in Battletoads, instead of being on like the speeder bike things that they have, you're kind of in a Cadillac as well. Again, Leonard, Loricella, if you're hearing this and you realize like, oh no, that's not how it is, let us know. I'm interested in playing this game because these types of beat 'em ups in like the early and mid '90s, I love these types of games. X-Men, Simpsons,
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles.
But
these
any
games
game
are
called
amazing.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs
Yeah.
has to be a gem.
Yeah,
It has to
exactly.
be a gem.
Yeah,
I totally want to play that.
yeah,
I'm gonna round this out because Random Flying Computer,
yeah.
who is probably one of the most hardcore people on my Discord, and by hardcore, just because they're gonna listen to this, I mean like most present, like
Yeah,
comments and everything, responds like super responsive. It's a good quality to have.
100%.
Appreciate you. They said myself, which I'm assuming is a nod to a Random Flying Computer, which is their So they want
Which
to
is their
ride a
Discord
random
handle.
flying
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah.
It's like a little computer with a cartoon face, and then it's got a little copter on top.
It's a great little
So
avatar. It's an awesome little
yeah,
avatar. It
it's pretty
really
funny.
is. I haven't actually said that in the Discord at all, but it actually is a great little character. And finally, I want to mention Matt Stormageddon, who has been on the show twice, has been on Remember 64 twice, with Yoshi's Story and with Buck Bumble. Two games that I thoroughly enjoyed, especially Buck Bumble. So take a listen to
Dump the
those.
rock with the biggity buck. Oh
Oh my god,
there's such a good song.
It's
Such
just
a good bop.
it's incredible. Also, host of one of the hosts of the Fun and Games podcast, so check out their work there. Matt is just an awesome guest, awesome podcaster, so check out their stuff. But they said, which is something that they've covered in detail, Mass Effect, but the Normandy SR2 from Mass Effect is something that has a huge, emotional aspect to those games, because it is such a big part of what the Mass Effect series is, and those games are excellent and they're great RPGs. So I wanted to give Matt Stormageddon a little bit of a shout out, because great guest, great podcaster, and great choice. Another vehicle, and going to space. Speaking of the R-Wing, go to space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that is our roundup of Pilot Wings, and thank you everyone for responding to the nerd question of the day. I'm gonna try and do more of those and release more based on
like
the games.
That was cool.
Yeah, and I you know what, like a question like this got a pretty good response, and I just came up with it in 2 seconds. So sorry everybody, it sounds like I may try that hard, but I actually kind of don't. But thank you for responding.
Nerds love stuff like this. Yeah. I'll tell you.
Okay, so before we get out of here, Jiggy, let's talk about your work on YouTube.
I work on YouTube.
Okay, cool. See everybody next time. No.
No, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of cool stuff. If you think about weird things like Rayman's limbs and how they work, you'll love my YouTube channel. Comparison about games, analyzing and reviewing really obscure games. The last game I just did was analyzing everything about Disney's Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse. And that game is legendary, let me tell you.
Great game.
It is a point and click Mickey Mouse game on the Nintendo GameCube. So if you're curious about that, go check out my YouTube and go drop a comment and say, I came here from the Remember 64 show.
Let's do it.
You'll love it.
Yeah, Jiggy Look Back on YouTube. You can obviously find Remember 64 on YouTube as well, where you'll find this episode, video version. And you can also find, I have a couple of small reviews on there, putting up some goofy shorts every once in a while. Also working through playing some games. You'll see some gameplay videos as well, including a new N64 inspired game called Cavern of Dreams. I'm doing, instead of doing live streams, which I kind of have a hard time finding time for, I'm playing through that game, but also doing commentary and playing with my camera on. You kind of see me play it and comment on it and stuff like that. So I'll have that out in chunks, probably in about 3, maybe 4 episodes or something. So it'll be
not to say that you don't do live streams though, because you have.
I have.
It's just
harder.
It's just you gotta watch for them. You just gotta watch for them.
Yeah, we gotta plan for it. I personally have to plan for it more than probably some people that have extra time for and stuff. Life gets in the way of the good stuff, man. Life gets in the way of the good stuff. So
I would just say shout out all the socials. We both have Instagram, we both have Twitter, Blue Sky.
Yep.
Whatever else.
Whatever the heck else exists.
TikTok, whatever the kids are using these days, we got them all.
Exactly. The show will be Remember 64 Show, and for you it'll be Jiggy Look Back, all the same across the board, so you can find us all across the social medias there.
Oh, tell them about the Patreon.
And then on the Patreon, exactly, on the Patreon, for just $1 a month, you can get every episode early. You can get video versions of the episodes early. And then you can also get sort of the playthroughs as well. So like Cavern of Dreams, for example, those episodes have been and will be going up early. And a way to support the show and expand it and help us do more cool stuff. So patreon.com/Remember64 Show. Yeah.
I think we also talked about putting maybe a few kind of smaller exclusive content videos.
Exactly.
Just for Patreon. So if you want to see everything, you'll definitely want to become a patron. And it's cool. And you can do it for as little as $1. Yes. Come on. $1
And what's interesting too is like some of the stuff, like for example the videos. Let's say it's up early. Once it gets launched, Patreon has a thing. I'm starting to try to figure out exactly how it's all set up. Patreon has a thing where you can actually post free stuff now. It's not just behind paywalls. Like it'll actually allow you to post shorts and things like that for free to access stuff. So you don't have to ignore it and be like, I don't want to give them $1. That's fine. You don't have to. There will still be stuff posted for free as well. So it is a place to find extra content, even if you're not like subscribed in that way. But please do, because we love you as an audience and want to keep the good stuff rolling and expand the show further. And $1 a month.
Yeah. I'll also add in there that we have Discord. We have it's my Jiggy Look Back Discord server. Join it. There is a whole Remember 64 channel where we have Talk About 64, where people just that's what we do. We chat about 64 games. You'll see questions like that. People post memes. We share our collections, all that jazz. It's super fun to get involved and join these communities. It's a Jiggy Look Back Remember 64 community. Like, they're the same.
Yeah,
they're the same community.
One and the same.
It's one and the same. It might say Jiggy Look Back, but it's also Remember 64. We've really kind of merged everything, and it's fun.
It's awesome.
Fun, and
I know. It's been really great. Yeah, exactly. So check all that stuff out, everybody. And that's pretty much it. That'll do it for this episode of Remember 64. Thank you very much for joining us, whether it's video or audio form. We will talk to you or see you next time. Goodbye.
I feel like there was some sort of Top Gun reference that I should say at the end, but
what would that be? I'm not good with references from movies that I surprisingly don't enjoy all that much. Oops, did I say that out loud? I wasn't supposed to, was I?